Great. So good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are watching this from. We are absolutely delighted to be bringing you the first ever Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society live streamed panel discussion. This discussion is called The Fringe Guide to Doing a Show. And over the next 90 minutes, we're going to take you from stage to stage, bringing your work to Edinburgh right through to hopefully enjoying the successes that an Edinburgh experience will bring you. From social media, we know we're being joined by people as far afield as Auckland, Yokohama, New York, Toronto. So that's great. For us, this is a massive step towards reducing our carbon footprint in our everyday operations, and hopefully this won't be the first time, the last time that we bring you events through our website and with the help of Inner Ear. So today we're going to be chatting to our wonderful panelists who, before we came here today, I did a bit of sums. Collectively, our panel has over 110 years experience of the Fringe. So if you're going to take advice from anyone, this is a very good place to start. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their first Fringe experience and what got them hooked. And we'll start with you, Lesley Anne.
My name's Lesley Anne Rose. I'm a freelance producer. I work mainly for Stellar Quines Theatre Company, but for enough money, I'll work for anyone, produce anyone's show. I came to the Fringe first about 20 years ago as an audience member. I worked in a Fringe venue for about 3 or 4 years, which is really valuable experience for anyone who wants to bring work here. And I brought my first show to the Fringe in 2012, which was The List, a one-woman show for Stellar Quines. Most memorable Fringe experience? I don't know, you just sprung that one on me. I think maybe the first time I walked onto the Royal Mile and just saw the sheer volume of people and just the sheer buzz of all of the creativity, all of the passion, all of the excitement, and I would say that got me hooked.
Great. And Kath?
Thank you. My name's Kath Mainland. Hello. I'm the Chief Executive of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, and I've been working in and around the Fringe and Edinburgh's other festivals for more than 20 years. My first Fringe experience was when I was studying in Glasgow, Scotland's other city, and a classic sort of Fringe tale. My flatmate's brother was doing a show in a church hall somewhere tucked away. I'd hardly been to Edinburgh, let alone the Fringe, and was just utterly blown away and knocked out by this. I thought that Edinburgh was quite a sleepy city and that we were, maybe didn't have anything culturally for us. And I was just blown away by this just sheer volume and buzz and excitement of the way that the Fringe just took over the entire city. And I still feel like that today.
Great.
My name is Mark Fisher. I'm a freelance journalist, theatre critic and feature writer. And I'm the author of the Edinburgh Fringe Survival Guide, which people who are here in real life can buy in real life from me here. I have copies. People virtually can buy virtually, and however you do that. I wrote that book a couple of years ago and was able to draw, I suppose, from my own experiences talking to people on the Fringe, seeing a lot of Fringe shows, and also Barry's first question, what was my first Fringe experience? Apart from having come here as a tourist, I was in a student show in 1983, I think, from the University of Kent at Canterbury. The play was called Shabunkin, and it performed at, I think it was a YMCA, at the venue's not there anymore, at the west end of Princes Street. And there's always that thing that it's quite funny as a journalist. People often quote back lines that you've completely forgotten because it's not at all important to you, but very important to them. But I can still remember a line that Bonnie Greer, I can even remember that it was Bonnie Greer in The Scotsman, wrote, and she said that this play, Shabunkin, it wove a Coronation Street idiom onto a Miltonian frame. And that made it sound quite good. And it did actually mean that a few people came to see it. And so the value of marketing, we'll be talking about marketing later, but if you get a good quote, milk it for all it's worth. Did you want the most extraordinary Fringe experience as well?
Yeah,
was that a question?
Go for it.
I was in the late, probably not many years later from that, there was a fantastic musical trio from Australia called the Doug Anthony All-Stars. And they were a very big sort of underground cult hit. And they would do all sorts of mad things. In addition to their regular sets, they would then get the audience to come out of the theatre with them and go singing peculiar Christian songs around campfires and stuff. And this particular occasion that happened at the Pleasance, where they performed in Pleasance too. And at the end of the show, they said, "Oh, let's all come out." And round the back, in what was then a bit of scrap land, there had been a production of Beowulf earlier in the evening, which had been an outdoor sort of site-specific-y show around a campfire, and the campfire was still glowing. And so we all gathered round, and they were all, mucking around, singing songs and so on. One of them, Paul McDermott, was put a plank over the flames and tried to walk, walking with through fire type things. So up until this point, it had all been, we'd been in their charge. But then a very strange thing happened. One of the audience members got out his wallet and threw his credit card onto the flames. And then somebody else from the audience also threw their credit card, and there was a sort of mass credit card burning, and it just for me summed up the sort of heady hedonism of Edinburgh, that there's this sort of transformative power that not just the shows, but maybe really the audience themselves take on this festival spirit, and that epitomises me.
Which in itself could be a visual metaphor for bringing work to the Fringe.
Don't bother bringing the show, just throw your credit card onto it.
Christabel.
Hello, my name is Christabel and I'm the Head of Participant Services at the Fringe Society. So that means I head up all of the advice and services for all of you who are taking part in the Fringe. Before I did this job, I worked on various shows at the Fringe and in various venues, and I also worked on 3 Weeks, which is a paper that reviews from the Fringe. So my first Fringe experience, going back somewhere, I was mid-90s. I was a teenager, and my family are from Edinburgh, so my dad brought me up for a week, and I was excused from all the family visits, but it was Fringe time, so he just gave me a copy of the Fringe programme and some money and a map and said, go on, there's a festival out there, go and see what you like. And that was just completely magical, potentially quite neglectful. I was quite young. But I just had the best time. So I just went around, I saw loads of shows, I discovered all kinds of places, and I saw sort of 6 shows a day, and that completely hooked me. And I suppose there are too many most memorable moments to mention, but one from kind of my early years being at the Fringe was I was doing the lights for a show in the day, and also working in the venue box office and doing shifts there. And I just remember in the morning that I woke up and I thought, well, that's what I get to do today, and that's what I get to do today for the next 3 weeks. So it was before I was a professional in the arts, and that just made me so happy. And I think that was the moment that I kind of went, this festival's really good.
JD.
Hi, I'm JD Henshaw. I'm the Artistic Director of Sweet Venues. I'm the Chairman of the AIVP, and when I get a free moment, I also am the Artistic Director of DBS Productions and do my own shows as well at the Fringe, which means I don't sleep. So, but that's okay, that's what September's for. Gosh, first Fringe experiences. My first Fringe was about 13 years ago, unlucky. And if it could go wrong, it did. It was probably one of the worst possible entrances to the Fringe ever. Everything got booked wrong, everything went wrong. One of the actors ran away in the night. It really did all happen. There is a photo of me back in Dundee kissing the train platform because I have made it and I'm alive and I'm home. So I then promptly came back the next year and the next and the next, and then took over a venue and now own my own venue and have not looked back since. So it's quite wonderful.
Great. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Barry Churchwoods. I'm the Venues and Companies Manager for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society. The Fringe Society is a registered charity in Edinburgh, and we're charged with supporting the implementation of the biggest arts festival in the world and helping you make your way through that experience and making sense of Edinburgh when you arrive in August, when some people say it's the cultural centre of the universe. It's a massive, massive task. We all love our jobs. It's a great festival to work for. And I'm going to ask Kath to tell us a little bit about the festival and its origins. It's going to seem like I'm ignoring a lot of our panelists, but there is a business end to this session. And I'm going to talk with Kath and Christabel for probably the next 15 minutes. And then we'll hear from our wonderful other colleagues here. So Kath, please tell us about the festival.
Thank you, Barry. So the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is a open access festival, and that means that it's not curated by me or this organisation, but it's made up of artists and creative souls from all over the world who want to take part in it. And it began many, many years ago in 1947. And in 1947, the Edinburgh International Festival had been created by Rudolph Bing, the composer, by the Lord Provost of the City of Edinburgh, as a post-war initiative to bring together the people of war-torn Europe with a cultural festival. So a really enlightened, wonderful expression of what creativity and artistic expression could do for us as a nation and a continent. So in that first year, 1947, the same year as the International Festival had been created, several companies decided that this was a good thing, that there had been this new festival created, but perhaps were slightly annoyed that they hadn't been invited to take part in it, and realised that there would be an attention in the city, that there would be an audience in the city, and decided in the proper showbiz tradition just to do their work anyway. So the Fringe was born all those years ago on the fringe of the International Festival. It wasn't called the Fringe at that point. It was a cultural intervention, if you like, but nobody decided to start the Fringe. These companies just decided that they would do their shows and see how they got on. And it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew from there, roughly doubling in size every decade. 10, 12 years went past and the Fringe Society was formed to look after the companies who were taking part in the Fringe. Some years later, the name Fringe was coined. But all these years later, I think that what's really important and special about the Fringe is that the three kind of founding principles still remain true today. It is on the fringe of the International Festival, which continues to be a significant cultural event, and many other festivals in the city too, the Book Festival, the Art Festival, many others. It takes part in Edinburgh. Edinburgh, the city itself, is a very important fact of the Fringe. It's a small, beautiful, cultural, historic city. It's the capital city of Scotland, and because it's small and very easy to navigate, the Fringe literally permeates all over the city centre. The International Festival is still, as it was at the beginning, taking over the year-round theatres, and so the Fringe has had to improvise and find spaces all over the rest of the city. And most importantly, it is and continues to be artist-led. It's made up of people who want to take part in it. It's not our job to decide who those people are or what they should or shouldn't do. It's our job to support anyone and everyone who has an idea and a story to tell and a voice that wants to be heard.
Great, thank you. So the really interesting thing, recently we went through an archiving project where we went into our building and the libraries and looked at the history of the festival in a bit more depth. The festival became the biggest annual arts festival in the world in 1981, and there were 242 shows. Shall we talk scale just now?
Yes.
So do you want to do the numbers?
Yeah, so if I can remember them. So it's grown and grown and grown. It is the world's largest arts festival, and in 2013, 2,871 different companies from over 40 countries performed in the festival. We estimate that over 25,000 individuals took part in it, and by the end of the 3 and a bit weeks, over 42,000 performances had taken place in 273 venues. So it is of some scale. It is a vast festival, but it is a wonderful that I think what's really important about the Fringe is the freedom of expression and the kind of spontaneous way that it's expressed in the city every year. It's all things to all people. It's cross art form. It's got a lot of theatre and comedy, but also music, dance, work for children, visual arts, all sorts of art form, any art form, cabaret, spoken word, opera, anything. And it's made up of companies and artists at every stage of their career. So from individual artists starting out, student companies, amateur companies, to professional companies absolutely at the top of their game, and everything else in between.
Perfect. So I was just about to go to Christabel. I'm wondering if there's an issue with our sound here. Okay, Christabel, this is a massive, massive festival, and it can be really, really daunting. I'm hopefully going to cover most of the things that you will be thinking about, and but if we don't cover all your questions, then you can ask them if you're here, or you can submit them using the chat box on the screen. It's either to the right of your screen if you're watching through the Inner Ear website, or at the bottom of the screen if you're watching through the Ed Fringe website. You can also submit questions using the hashtag EdFringe, EDFRINGE. We'll gather them together. That hashtag we'll be collecting from Twitter and Facebook, but not Instagram, because pictures aren't questions. So Christabel, to try and make sense of this festival and the process of getting here, could you maybe bullet point the experiences, the things that you have to go through, please?
Yeah. So the first thing that we always say to anyone wanting to bring a show to the Fringe is do your research, which everybody's doing right now, so that's great. But also make sure you've had a really good look around our website. On the webpage that we're streaming from, you'll see there's a menu on the left-hand side. There's all the information that you'll ever really need about bringing a show. So do have a good look round that. Also, you'll see on our website, you can sign up to our mailing list. We send bulletins out on a regular basis that give you updates and news, and also remind you of the things you should be doing when. So do sign up to those. Also talk to people. As we've said, this is the largest arts festival in the world. There have been hundreds of thousands of performers from every corner of the globe. So it's very likely that someone near you has been to the Fringe, and you probably know lots of people who've done it. So make sure you talk to them, get their opinions, their take on it, ask for their advice. And once you've had a really good look and a really good chance to research the Fringe, and you've decided it is for you, the first thing you want to do is find a venue. You contact venue managers directly, and you deal with them to decide where you're going to perform, what dates, what time, ticket prices, all of those logistical issues. We have a venue search on our website, as well as a PDF guide called The Guide to Choosing a Venue. So you can have a look through there about the kind of venues that are on offer, their capacities, their tech specs, and make a short list of the ones that you're interested in. We certainly recommend that you contact a large number of venues, definitely between 4 to as many as 8 or 10, to get an idea of the kind of offers that are out there, the kind of financial deals that are out there. It's a really important decision where you perform, so the more options you can give yourself, the better. Once you've got a deal with the venue manager, that's when you register your show with the Fringe Society. Sometimes your venue will do that for you, so do check who's doing it. But if you're registering your show directly with the Fringe Society, then you do that through EdFringeware, which is our brand new registration system. Yes, so we're very, very excited. For those of you who've done the Fringe before, it will be quite familiar, but it has a bit of a new look. So you go to the show registration page on edfringe.com, access EdFringeware through there, and then it's an online form which collects all the information about your show and all the information we need to help you do your show. It's where you give us all the listings information to go in this brochure. So you give us copy and an image, and all your listings and venue information goes in there as well. Registration is also the time when you'll pay the only money you pay to the Fringe Society up front. All the registration fees are listed online. It depends how many performances you're doing and when you register, but it's between about £100 and about £400. So those are all online. Once you've registered, you're ready to go from the Fringe Society's point of view, but then it's over to you to prepare your show. Remember, you won't have much tech time when you're in Edinburgh, so we definitely recommend that you spend time preparing your show, making sure it's ready to go from the day you arrive. Once you also need to think about, obviously, travel and accommodation, and our programme launch is on the 5th of June this year, and that's when you should start thinking about your getting your own press releases out and getting your marketing and media campaign together, and also thinking about your aims for coming to the Fringe, if you want to tour afterwards, getting in touch with our team here and thinking about contacting any presenters that are at the Fringe. Once you arrive in Edinburgh, you will have a short time to get into your venue and to get your show ready. And then it's a case not just of doing your show every day, but also of making sure that you're out there flyering, carrying on with your marketing campaign, carrying on with all your promotional activities. But also the thing to remember is this is a great festival, and it shouldn't just be about doing your show. It's also about leaving headspace to see other work. The work you'll see here, you'll never see anywhere else. And also making sure you have time to meet other people. Coming into this building, we run this building as our participant centre in August. So it's the place to come to meet us at the Society and other people, and we also run workshops and events to help you network and enhance your skills. So, so definitely leave some headspace for that too.
Great, thank you very much. Now we're going to go over each of these points in a bit more depth, but before we do that, I want to just ask Lesley Anne. So you're a creative producer for a very well-established company that has a very good reputation for your work. On its own back out with the festival. Why? Why would you then put this work into a marketplace where you're competing with nearly 3,000 other shows?
It's a question I've asked myself often. There's many reasons why it's really good to bring a show to the Fringe, and the first thing I want to really flag up is actually the Fringe Participants Programme. Even for someone like myself who has been in the industry for quite a long time, the Fringe Participants Programme is the best professional development programme that there is, full stop. You organise events on things like live streaming, how to tour your show internationally, all the things that you never learn at university, that you never learn in college, that you just kind of emerge into the world wanting to put a show on, but you really don't know where to begin. So that alone, the Fringe Participants Programme alone is gold dust. And even if you bring a show, you don't get any audience, just come here to this building and absorb all the knowledge and all the information and meet all the people that you possibly can. So that's point one, I think, why it's good to bring a show here. Point two, I think, is the artistic learning that you can do. The Fringe audience is, generally speaking, a very open-minded audience, so you could perhaps try things out here that you couldn't in more sort of traditional venues, in a more traditional theatre setting. So there's lots of artistic learning and experiments you can do here too. Finally, everybody's in town. You know, you've got international producers, you've got promoters, anybody who works in theatre or in the arts, they're here. And if they don't come and see your show, it's likely you might meet them in a bar. So everyone's here.
Oh, great. It's worth pointing out at this time that we're not paying our panellists. They are volunteering this information. They're genuinely here because they like the festival. So Mark, during the creation of your book, I suppose, the research, you interviewed how many people?
70 people, something like that.
So 70 quite in-depth interviews, certainly a lot of people within our organisation, and then a lot of producers and performers and other journalists. Could you talk a little bit to the general overview, the motivations that you find for people taking part in the festival?
I think that one of the interesting things, a way of looking at it, I mean, we made a joke before about how much money this whole thing can cost, and you may be going into a bit more detail about that later. It's healthy not to think about money, sometimes. By which I mean, there are, as Lesley Anne points out, there are many, many advantages that you can get from being in Edinburgh in August, which aren't financial. It's nice to be out of that kind of rat race way of thinking. I mean, it'd be crazy to be reckless with your money, but if you can, as long as you can budget correctly, to start thinking about the other things that you can get from being here. And so we've mentioned some of them, the opportunity of seeing other work, the opportunity of developing your own, the opportunity, if you're a comedian, for example, to perform, it doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, to perform 30 nights or 20 nights back to back on a night to not just to your friends, but to a completely different audience. If you're on the free fringe, there may be people drifting in and drifting out. Your job is to hold them. You will be a better comedian at the end of the festival than you are at the start. You will be a better actor if you're doing a show night after night after night, because it's not, you know, if you've come from a university group, maybe you're used to performing to other students, but this you've got to appeal not just to students but to the whole wealth and breadth of people who will just be out for seeing a good show. And that's an important thing to remember as well, is that the audience here there's a cultural audience here. There are people who are on holiday specifically to see shows, and so your market is there, and we'll talk about marketing a bit in a minute. So there are many reasons, and in terms of budgeting, if you have to, obviously you have to budget, but to think that the investment the money that you spend in August is actually an investment at least for 12 months, perhaps for 5 years, and the benefits that you get for meeting that person in the Travis bar who says, oh yes, that idea sounds really interesting, send me a script, send me a synopsis, that might pay off next January or 3 years down the line. So you're opening yourself up to a world of possibility, and I can't tell you what those possibilities are because you never quite could tell how they're going to play out.
No, it's really interesting. Recently I was talking to a producer and he was saying that, he's still touring a show 6 years later that he brought to the festival, and it's because it just cracks the first small part of the market where he wants to get around the UK and build an audience, and suddenly he's spending 2 years in Australia touring, and these opportunities all come from the festival and through engaging with our arts industry office as well, which we will go into later. JD, so I'm kind of interested in both your hats in terms of why you would present work as a performer or an artist, but also what motivates people to run venues in Edinburgh.
Madness, sheer madness. I mean, I think I've answered both questions at once. Yeah. From a performer, producer perspective, it's that opportunity to put in a new piece of work that you've managed to test in rehearsal, that sort of, you've been through its process, but the opportunity to be able to put it on for a month solidly, back-to-back performances, interact with a different audience every day, an international audience every day, it's just second to none. You're never going to be able to crash test a show in that way anywhere else. And yeah, it is. It is because bits fall off. And then you go, all right, why did that happen?
We didn't need them.
Okay, yeah, I don't need that bit. So the show streamlines, the actors get better, everybody learns from the process. And the people you're going to interact with, the people you meet, from the days when I was only coming to the Fringe as a performer and bringing shows, the friendships that I've made worldwide that have been with me for a decade or more now, people I would never have met. It's unreal. From a venue perspective, why run a venue? Because, well, for me, it's very personal. I began bringing shows to the Fringe, and I wanted that experience to broaden out for other people, and I want to share the joy and the excitement and those opportunities with others. Sounds a little bit.
No, that's a really common experience for venue managers. You find when you talk to most venue managers or venue producers that they fell in love with the festival in the same way that we did, and it just happens that maybe they couldn't dance, or So yeah, people really engage with it in that sense, and it's quite exciting. So here's the bit when we're going to give you the magic formula. Not really, Kath. What works? In terms of what
sort of work you should bring?
Yeah.
Well, almost anything, and I think it's really important. It's a sort of cliche to say, but I think it's undoubtedly true that you need to bring something that is really good, and that you really believe in, and that you know why you're doing it. And then it really doesn't matter what it is. I think there is no magic formula, clearly. Or we wouldn't be sitting here, we would be out there being drinking champagne and being top producers. But I think if it's good and you believe in it, and you think there's an audience for it, and you understand what you're trying to get out of it and what that audience is, then you can bring almost anything, as long as you have the rights to do it, of course. And I think it's what Mark was saying about the different kinds of audiences. There's a very big public risk-taking, quite loyal audience who's looking to discover a new thing. It's a festival with a reputation for discovering new work, but it also has a lot of work that's been done again and again and again. Yeah. There's the industry audience. If you're looking to launch your work, to tour internationally, this is a good place to do it. Then you have to have the rights not to do it just in this country but elsewhere. There's a big media audience in attendance, and you get to those audiences in slightly different ways. So I think you have to believe in your work and know why you're doing it, but also know what the market is that you're trying to find for it. Otherwise, you'll get a little bit confused and a bit muddied perhaps. But I think you could bring anything. And I think Mark said at an event that we did earlier during the festival this year, in fact, I think that what you mustn't do is fall into the trap of thinking that there's a formula, or look, it's good to look through the programme from the year before and find the sort of things that did well and talk to your venue about the things that did well, but don't think that replicating that will work for you. There's something really lovely about the Fringe, because it doesn't have an overarching artistic director or vision, that things emerge, themes emerge. You can say, oh, it's a festival about this, it's a festival, this is a theatre festival, this is a comedy festival, this is about, serious issues, this is frivolous. But don't try and second guess that. You just do the show that you really, really think is the best work that you have, that you want to put out there in front of an audience.
Okay, let's go to Mark.
And if I could just amplify that, it's interesting if you look back, and I'm talking now in my role as a theatre critic, and every year, for the past 20 years, I have got the Fringe programme, loyally sort of read through it all, tried to work out what the themes are, trying to work out what the hit shows are going to be, read press releases. Now you can go online to see people's websites, find out as much as you can do using your, taking educated guesses, taking, the experience of the past and so on. And every single year I am surprised by the thing that turns out to be the hit. It's this show that you can't even remember reading the title of, and everyone's saying, have you seen this? And you have to go and see it. And if I think just from the top of my head of the kinds of shows that people have got very excited about in recent years, Forza Bruta comes to mind, because it's just been in London in the news for wrong reasons, actually. But that's a sort of big three-dimensional show that takes place over your head, a sort of very circusy, exciting, dynamic show. I guess also exciting and dynamic was Blackwatch, the National Theatre of Scotland's fantastic production, which is a thing possibly even still touring the world, which opened the first year that the National Theatre of Scotland launched in 2006. So that was on a very, very big scale. But then a couple of years ago, Mies Julie from South Africa, an amazing reinterpretation of Strindberg's play Miss Julie, was the big hit, and that was just had 2 or 3 actors. And who would imagine that a Strindberg play reimagined in South Africa would be the thing that would animate people, and so what people like me are looking for is just a feeling, really. It's just like an energy. It's a novelty comes into it, but a surprise comes into it. But there's a tremendous appetite for the new and for some experience that you haven't had before, and because it's something I haven't had before, I really can't tell you what it is, but because you're artists, you can tell me what it is.
Okay, I'm going to come to you in a moment, JD, but I'm quite interested in the process as a producer in terms, for Stellar Quines, for example. You've just said that the list, which Fringe first winning show, came away with loads of great reviews, a solo performance though. How much did that play into the decision to present, with it being I imagine a smaller budget, although I know the actress is very, very talented and probably not cheap. But how much does the scale of your work play into presenting in Edinburgh?
Enormously. I mean, there are restrictions, I think, for bringing a show here. There's cost restrictions. Also, venues don't like to programme long shows. They certainly don't like to programme a show with an interval. They want to get shows back to back. So I would say, you might have something to say about this as well, that you're looking about an hour and a half is absolute tops. You can't expect someone who comes to the Fringe to see a show, to sit in your auditorium for longer than an hour and a half. They want to go and see show after show after show. So think very much about the length of it. For practical reasons as well, if you've got a large cast, and particularly if you don't live in Edinburgh, that really starts to hike up the costs in terms of accommodation and technically it's got to be simple. You'll often get only a 15-minute get in and get out, whereas when you're touring a big show to normal venues, you get a whole day to do a tech. You don't get that at all at the Fringe. Even when you first bring it in, you might only get 2 hours to tech and dress. So it's got to be technically very simple, easy to move. The venues don't give you a lot of space. They don't have a massive set because venues will say you've got to go and store it somewhere else, which you'll not find space in Edinburgh during the Fringe to do that. Simplicity, short, succinct, and good.
Oh, good. All right, so JD, as a venue programmer, what really turns you off?
What really turns me off?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a valuable thing because when you're at the stage, that first impression is really important. And I think we talk a lot about what you should do, but we very rarely touch on what you shouldn't. And let's be honest, it makes our job a lot easier if we're not running around trying to find lots of people venues in April just before the programme locks down.
It never happens. What turns me off, and I imagine I'm speaking for pretty much everybody that does my job. Don't come in telling us how, and again, it's just to completely agree with that, the previous comment from Lesley Anne, it's don't come at me with a 45-minute get in and then a 45-minute get out, because that's going to be really complicated and it's not going to happen. There's ways to approach how you pitch the show. Don't think just because you've just come up with this new play that therefore telling me about your new exciting writing is all you ever needed to tell me. I am looking for new theatre, I am looking for new comedy. Everybody that's coming with a show, it's their first, everybody has their first time. So you're pitching then against an awful lot of performers who are doing the exact same thing, but the person who then comes and says, I've come up with this new piece and it's about, and starts talking to you about their show and engaging you with their show, that's the show that you're going to book, as opposed to the show that goes, well, I've just done this.
Yeah.
You know, right, okay, well, you and all these other people, and there's an awful lot of people out there looking for a space. Yeah. And all of them have just come up with the best show, because it's their show.
Of course.
And there's nothing wrong with that. They're quite correct. It's the show that they've worked on and they've slaved over. So the last thing you want to do is put a hurdle in front of it before you've actually gotten it into a venue. And basically do it a discredit. You want to engage people with the show. Tell me what's exciting about the show. And I guess kind of the opposite of what I'm doing just now. Tell me what's good about your show, not what's... potentially, I don't know who you are, where you've come from, anything. What I need to therefore know is about the show, the performance that you're about to bring. The exciting actors that you may have involved in it, the people that might have names, they should be the second thing you tell me about, because it's got to be a good piece of work. That's the most important thing, because we all know that you can have a great show with a great cast and it does well, but you can have an appalling show with a great cast and it flounders. You know, so get that show right, find that right show, and really show me that you care about it. Because if you care about it, then I'll care about it.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about finding a venue. This is obviously it's the first thing you have to do once you know the work that you're bringing. I wonder, Christabel, maybe, if you could talk a little bit about how venues programme and kind of the financial deals. And then I would like to go back to JD as the chair of AIVP, which is the Association of Independent Venue Producers. So you can talk a little bit about quality control and our best practice codes and things like that. So Christabel, maybe if you start.
Yeah, well, the first thing that you'll find out very quickly when looking for a venue is that all venues are different. There aren't really standards. They're all independent organisations and they all work to their own methods. So in terms of approaching them, some of them will have application forms they'll ask you to fill in. Others you just start with a simple email, sometimes a phone call. Certainly if they have application procedures, make sure that you follow them, because as JD was saying, they do work in very large volumes. So certainly if there are instructions, do follow them. Everyone's programming to about the same time scale. Deadlines, we've got a discount deadline for registration on the 19th of March, and what's known as the Fringe deadline, which is the deadline to be in this printed programme, is the 9th of April this year. So they're all programming to the same kind of time scale. So you want to be starting this conversation with venues, and what you do need to be aware of is that it's one enormous jigsaw puzzle. So venues are talking to lots of companies, and companies are talking to lots of venues, and you may suddenly get an offer because someone dropped out somewhere else. And that sounds very frightening, but it does work every year. It does have a synergy that makes it work, as everyone on the panel will agree. It does work, and the reason it works is because everyone keeps they're up front with each other about the offers they've had. Don't keep someone waiting. If you said that you'll get back to them, do make sure that when you're talking to venues, you tell them who else you're talking to. It's fine, it's absolutely fine to talk to other venues. You don't have to pretend that you're not. That's normal practice, but just make sure that you're not playing people off against each other, and that you're being very upfront in your discussions, and ask the same for your venue, so everyone knows where they are, and then it all comes to place sometime around April, usually. So there are lots of things to consider when picking your venue. Obviously, capacity, stage size, technical things, and you'll all know what's best for your show. Financial deals obviously is a big consideration, and again, everyone's different, but there are some standard models. The first model is what's known as the free model, and that's an arrangement where a venue manager will take over a space, often they're connected to pubs or restaurants, and they'll get that space for free from the landlord, and the venue manager will then give artists slots to perform their work, and that's free of charge, which is why it's known as free. And in return for getting that free space to perform in, the artists are often asked to work and do front of house for other people's shows. So it works as a collective, all of the artists together help run the venue. And also in return for not paying for their venue space, those artists don't charge the audience any money. So it's usually unticketed and free for audience members to attend, but then a bucket or a hat is passed at the end, and audience members can donate if they wish. So that's the free model. Other venues will have some kind of fees attached. One of those models is what's known as straight hire fee. That's where you approach a venue, you talk about a slot, and the venue will say, this is how much this slot is going to cost you, and normally you'll pay in instalments. That's great because you certainly know how much the venue will be. It makes it very easy for budgeting, and also what it means is that you keep all of the ticket money. So any money that you make at the door, usually there'll be some commissions and deductions, but basically you get to keep all of your ticket money. The other model that's very common is what's known as a box office split, and that's an arrangement whereby there's no particular set fee, but you take a percentage of the box office. Typically would be about 60% to the company or artist, and the venue keeps about 40%. So that arrangement is obviously good because you're not taking all the risk, and it depends on how many tickets you sell, how much you have to pay. But it's worth noting that most box office splits will also come with what's known as a guarantee. And the guarantee will be a set amount, and that will be the minimum that you will have to pay the venue. So even if your share of the ticket sales don't reach a certain amount, you'll still have to give the venue that amount. So obviously that makes budgeting a bit harder because often you don't really know till the end of the Fringe how much your venue's going to cost. So it's worth, that's one of the main reasons why it's worth talking to so many different venues, is to get an idea of the different deals that are out there, and to make sure that when you're making that big financial decision, you have lots of options and lots of comparisons to make. And it's my job, me and Barry and our colleague Kevin are on the end of a phone, because we understand that sometimes these things can be hard to compare. So we're here not to tell you what to do. Certainly we would never choose your venue for you, but certainly we can talk you through all these different models and answer any questions that you have so that you can make the best decision that you can.
And on edfringe.com, in the participants section, there's a whole venue section. There's a venue search facility where you can look at what's on offer and the sort of deals that people offer. There's also a Fringe guide to choosing a venue. It's a massive PDF document. It's about 300 pages that includes technical specifications and just lots of information on those spaces. Don't print it out. The venue search facility is becoming more and more efficient the more that we develop our website and our databases. I'm going to ask JD, one of the most common issues that we get with companies trying to come to the Fringe is knowing who to trust. Actually, it's a massive marketplace. It's the same as collaborators on your work. It's a massive investment, so you need to feel a little bit secure. We work very closely with the Association of Independent Venue Producers as an organisation to try to streamline those processes. And where we don't manage any venues ourselves, we do try to have a bit of influence over operational behaviours. Is that fair? Yes. Would you like to talk a little bit about AIVP?
About your influence over my operational behaviours. Yes, AIVP, Association of Independent Venue Producers. It's a large grouping of venues of all sizes, from small up to what would get dubbed super venues. We all work together, we have regular meetings, and the main thing we're working together to do is ensure that there is a consistency and a quality to the venue you should expect as a performer to come into. As such, that also means that we have, with the Fringe Society, created a code of practice, and we all members of the IVP must adhere to that code. You can, in essence, rest a little easier. We are there to monitor each other and to talk back to the Fringe Society in effective meetings between us as well, to ensure that the performers get the best deal that they're getting. That all of us will do our different models, as Christabel rightly says, but you do have a right to expect a certain level of standard, a certain way that you're getting treated, and a certain security. Absolutely. And that's something that we all work very hard together to ensure happens. And also, therefore, if there are any issues, we then get to work properly with the Fringe Society, and we can all come back together and make change. And that's that exchange of views between, as I say, all these different sizes and scales of venue that really make that work. The idea of finding the venue that's right for you, I think actually is sort of completely inspirited in the IVP. We're all equal with each other within that structure. We're there to make sure we give you the best standard we can. And therefore you should be safe, picking whatever size of room at whatever size of venue you want to go to, and know that you're going to get treated well.
And it's great. I mean, I have to say, just even out with the IVP structure, thankfully, we very rarely have to deal with anything too traumatic. I mean, there are very few issues. I think if you really plan what you're doing and you think about it and you take advice from people, you talk to people who have been in those venues before. You phone me and you ask me what a venue's like, I'll tell you their capacity and their lighting plan if I know it. I will never tell you what the experience is as a company. The best thing that we always say is contact other companies. Look at the program from last year, ask what their experience was like. So even if they're not part of the IVP, you can do that. It's a really nice process. People are very flattered to be asked. There's a sort of pay it forward because they came last year, they did the same. So it's really not imposing on people. Look at our program, almost everyone has a Twitter handle as part of their online listing or a website where you'll be able to contact them. I'm going to quickly talk a little bit about technical considerations and venues and what you can expect, and then we'll move on to money. Christabel.
Lesley Anne summed it up very well in the kind of technical constraints that you have performing at the Fringe. Certainly you will be sharing your space with a lot of other companies. Each venue will have maybe 6, 8, 10 performances in a day, so there's very little time to turn around, there's very little storage space. You'll be sharing dressing rooms, you'll be sharing technical equipment. Every day you'll have to go in and reset lights and sound. It isn't like performing anywhere else. It is kind of performing as an extreme sport. So so be as prepared as you can. And I think the rule of thumb really for Edinburgh is don't assume anything, because it probably isn't like how it was when you did your show before or any show before. Keep in touch with your venue manager so that they know exactly what it is that you're bringing, exactly what you need, what they need to give you, and make sure everything that needs to be done for your show, you know who's doing it, whether you're responsible for it, whether your venue's responsible for it. If the venue's responsible for it, are they going to charge you for it? You need to keep up that dialogue from the moment you signed your contract. That doesn't mean your conversations are over. That's really when they start. And the other thing I would say though is don't let these constraints mould your show. It is true what Lesley says about what venues are looking for, but if you have a 6-hour piece that needs a 2-hour get-in, and that's the piece you want to bring, then find that venue that you can work with. It might not be the easiest thing in the world, but it would be a shame to let the technical constraints also constrain your artistic ambition. It's incredible what you can do in a 15-minute turnaround. It really is. So, and you know, just be realistic about it. If your show is 6 hours long, then don't pretend it is an hour to try and get into a venue space. So be aware of the technical environment that there is in Edinburgh, and just make it work to your advantage.
Mark, with your journalist's hat, how much of an understanding is there that work might be compromised technically when you go to see it?
I think I think yes, you are very, very aware of context because apart from anything else, you're seeing a show in the middle. Most theatre, I'm a theatre critic and I see theatre, and most of it on in the afternoon. There's a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening, but straight away you're seeing something. You're seeing theatre at a time that's unusual. So you do have to adapt and you do have to adjust. However, you still want to see something good, and you're not going to compromise that much. Just you're not going to be that forgiving of things. So the advice that was given earlier about bringing your best work is very well taken. And I'm also thinking about that thing about venues is that think very clearly about the show that you're doing and the nature of your show that you're doing and the kind of place that you might end up in. And it pays to see a venue, it pays to come to Edinburgh this year, 2014, with a view to performing in 2015, so that you can get an actual, it's all very well looking at a flat plan and lighting plots, but actually if you then find out that the wall is just, you're in a tent and that there's a umpar band playing next door and you want to do a little monologue that's very quiet and delicate, then the noise from next door is going to be, you might have a perfect spec, but it's imperfect because of the particular place that you find yourself into. So it's worth having a sense and worth finding out similar shows to yours that performed in similar venues last year and working out, well, if that was popular then, maybe this will be popular now.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out that in August, even while some of the best artists in the world are here, some of those artists are the technicians as well. We get people coming from all over the world to work here, and you don't have to compromise. I'm always really impressed when I go into some venues and outside they look like a church hall and inside they look like a West End venue. These are not people nailing curtains to the wall to give you a blackout. There's a real infrastructure, and people who have been doing it for years do it very, very well. So the sort of work you're bringing. You've got your eye on the venue, and you've sorted out the deal. There's an offer on the table. How do you pay for it, Kath?
Yes, again, if I knew that. There are all sorts of ways that you can pay for your show, and I suppose the first question is how much is it going to cost, which is a real piece of string question. It depends on so many different things, where you come from, how big your show is, what your venue is, how long you're doing, how many performances you do. There's so many different things. I think the real key to understanding how much it's going to cost is to do your budget properly. There's budget tools on edfringe.com. As we've said, talk to your venue about the charges that you'll find there. Are there hidden charges? And really make sure that you've thought about everything and you've put absolutely everything in there with a bit of contingency, so you've got your worst case scenario. Of course, if you don't come from Edinburgh, then accommodation will be a significant factor. Travel may be a significant factor. You might want to have some living expenses when you're here. You might want to buy tickets for other shows. You may need licensing for some of your shows. You may have to pay VAT on some of the costs. So just make sure that you understand everything and look at edfringe.com for some advice on that. And similarly on how you might get the money, there's a fundraising section there too. But this festival is fueled by creative entrepreneurs, so I think use your creative talents in all areas of your work, not just on stage, but getting that money too. We were talking to companies before about somebody who got all their friends to gift them air miles to pay for their ticket, about doing advertising in your programme, about not just getting money from people that your families or friends, but things that they might have that you might need. There may be some funding available depending where you come from in your own region. You may want to do a preview season for your friends, for your family, for the institution that you work in, all sorts of different things. But I think really, really creatively about that. That will be good experience for when you're here. But in terms of how much it is, make sure that you really have thought of everything, so that the worst thing is for there to be a kind of hidden surprise at the end because you weren't expecting VAT or you weren't expecting there to be a guarantee for your venue. And there's no right or wrong answer to any of those things, but really make sure that you understand what it's going to be, and then be really bullish and really creative about finding every single source of income that you can.
And in our New York panel discussion last week, we had Elaine Liner, who's a playwright and a solo performer, and she gave some really good advice on the idea that make your friends feel part of your success. It's a very un-British thing, actually, to ask people for money. You know, you just have to have a bit of a brass neck and let everyone know, let that person who gives you their air miles know that when you get that 5-star review, send them it and go, I wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for you. And people really engage with that. It's that whole Kickstarter thing where you give a little something back and people really appreciate that. So it's such a massive beast in terms of, you know, how you find the money. There are some hints to that in the Fringe Guide to Doing a Show, the document. Again, our participant development coordinators created this lovely little section on the website, fundraising, with all the different streams that are available. Some of them have expired by now at this time for this year, but there are still a few local authority funds that are there, and private funds as well. I imagine that resource will grow and grow and grow as more and more people realise it's there, and it's quite a nice route to get to the artists. Now let's talk about selling your show. And again, this is such a mammoth task that we do separate seminars based on how to sell your show. And there's a document on edfringe.com called The Fringe Guide to Selling a Show. That's filled with lots of different case studies, but it would be ridiculous to not talk about it for a little while when we have people like Mark on this panel. So let's talk about how you get people interested in what you're doing once you've got your venue deal and you're registered in the programme. In fact, let's talk about the 40 words in the programme first.
Well, yes, you're selling from the very start, aren't
Yeah.
you? And that idea that that the Fringe office is very good at pushing, which is that the visual image that you have that's in the Fringe programme should also be the same visual image that's on your flyer, which should also be the same on the poster, and reinforcing the image over and over and over again is very well taken. And the same applies to the 40 words that you start off describing your show. You've got to grab people with that. You know, take a look at previous programmes and see the ones that grab you and the ones that just, you know, don't. Yes, there's good writing and bad writing. And I think then beyond that, it's important to realise that there are two types of marketing. There's the regular sort of marketing that you might do at any time of the year in any performance location. And by that, if we're talking about Edinburgh, if you're doing a show that is about boxing, then find out where the local boxing groups are and put posters up and give them 2 for the price of 1 deals or whatever that might be. But then there's also Edinburgh Fringe specific advertising, which is, I mentioned before, that there is an audience here who are our cultural audience who are specifically here to see shows. That's what they want to do. However, the Fringe program is very big. They haven't got time to read it. They don't know what's good. They don't know what's bad. They don't know, can't tell. So they are very, very open to be influenced by the person who stands in front of them and says, I'm doing a fantastic show. It's fantastic for reasons X, Y, and Z. Come and see it. It's just 2 minutes down the road, and it's free, or you know, I'll give you a deal, or whatever your line is. It's worth honing that. It's worth working with your company if you've got a number of you involved in the show to find out how the best way of approaching people on the streets works for all of you, because you need to be very dedicated in. If you are going to do the flyering thing, it's tiring and exhausting, and it can be quite depressing if you don't get an immediate response. Work out what your type of show is, because there are certain shows that sell well by if you're giving flyers out on the high street where there's lots of families and fire eaters and jugglers and so on. You know that if you've got a big, bright family-ish sort of show, then you'll do well there. But if you've got a serious show about Karl Marx, then people are just going to look at you and go. So find out the other serious show about Karl Marx and find out the people coming out of it saying, if you like that Karl Marx show, come and see my Karl Marx show. Think creatively. I mean, the city is full of creative people, and I think sometimes the marketing could be more creative than it is.
So we have part of the resource you get through your registration is support from our media team that sits in our external affairs department. In May, late May, early June, once the printed programme comes out, we issue a list of media and instructions on how they like to be approached and the sort of stuff they're interested in. We'll send a bulletin once you've registered to let you know that happens. And that that sort of is very much dependent on you being able to write your news release and do all those things and sell your show that way. And I wonder, again, I'm going to come back to Mark in terms of if you could maybe talk about the value of having a PR, someone to do that for you. Sometimes they can be quite expensive. Sometimes they may seem to overpromise because it's there's no real science to it. So
Kath said that the costs were a how long is a piece of string question,
Yeah.
and I think the PA thing is a PR thing is a how long is a piece of string thing. The difficulty is that there's no model, there's no kind of neutral thing where you can say, well, if I'd have done it like this, I would have received this would have been the result, but I did it like that, and this was the result. It just depends. I mean, first of all, ask yourself why you're doing the show and what you want to get out of it. If you just want to have a good time while you're here, then and put on your show, have the experience of being seen by a few people, get drunk at night and so on, then there's probably very little reason in spending any money on sending out, expensive press releases and press packs and so on, because what's it going to get you back in return? However, if you want to have an autumn tour, then you want to make sure that the right people see you, that you've got quotes to take with you into the touring season beyond that and to other venue managers beyond Edinburgh. And therefore, that could pay off. If like David Benson a couple of years ago, you were doing a show that was about the Lockerbie bomber, the Lockerbie plane crash, and you want to raise that issue with the world's media, and it was that happened to be just as Al McGrahy was being sent back because through illness back home, and the world's media are interested, then the show was created by a producer in the first place, but you need the producer there to be saying, well, actually, the performer needs to get on and sleep or eat or rehearse or whatever, and you don't want to be in a situation where you as the performer are handling media inquiries every 5 minutes, and so to have that buffer, because your show is too popular, let alone being not popular enough, it can be very, very valuable. So if you think you're going to be in any one of those situations, then it's worth planning ahead. There are people who it's worth asking around. If you think, well, you've been approached by a press agent who you haven't heard of, well, try and find an approachable journalist. Approach me and say, well, have you ever heard of them? And if I haven't heard of the person, then probably they're not very good. They're not likelihood they're not a very good PR person, or they're whatever. So there are a lot of people who will. There are some people I think who will take money off you and possibly not give it back in return.
Okay, and JD, how much of that service would a venue provide?
That's going to come down to the venue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. We're back to that, the different models and the service that we provide. Some venues will have a press and marketing team. Some venues will expect that to be just left with the performing company itself. Communicate. Speak to them. I mean, that's it. You should have a checklist in front of you, the things that you think you need. And that's those questions. There is nothing wrong. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to say, no, I don't do that. Most likely you're going to get a fair chunk of those with yeses. But definitely just keep communicating to whoever it is that you're speaking to. And that's why you need to speak to several different venues. Don't rush at it. It's a big decision. Don't let anybody at the other end of that conversation make you feel you have to rush at it either. That's very important too. It's the biggest decision you're going to make. And those service levels that you get, perhaps they will provide you with a little bit of press support. Perhaps they won't. Perhaps you don't need it. And that's why you don't need that venue. That's the other thing as well. I think absolutely. If you're here to put on that piece of work that you've just always wanted to put on, well, why are you investing the additional money in that? But if you have got different set of aims, it's the first question I ask every show that applies to me is, what do you want out of your Fringe? Yeah. And that's how we can then work out what they need from us. If you don't have those ideas ready yet, you probably need to take a little bit more time about what you're doing with your show.
Great, thank you. So we've got about 10 minutes left of this chat before we're going to start fielding questions from the internet. So remember, EdFringe hashtag is where you can feed them in, or you can use any of the chat functions within the screen that you're watching this from. Christabel, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this building, networking, give some advice on that.
So, as we've said, one of the reasons that people come to the Fringe is to create further opportunities for themselves, for their work, and there are numerous success stories of people booking tours out of the Fringe. But again, it's one of those things that there is no magic formula. If we knew the magic formula, we'd be on the other side of the world with our very successful international touring shows. So I think, as well as people being excited by the opportunities of the Fringe, sometimes it can be a bit daunting too. So so it's our job to try and make it a little less daunting, and although we can't give you a magic formula, what we can do is give you some positive advice and information about the first kind of steps that you need to take when you're trying to take your show out beyond the Fringe. And the way that we do that is through our participant development service and all the facilities we offer here. So we have a team, and you can drop in and see us, and we also have surgeries and group sessions that you can come and sit down more formally and talk through your aims for bringing a show to the Fringe. And what we also do with those, as well as talking you through your aims and giving you some practical advice, we run an arts industry office, and that accredits promoters and programmers and presenters from across the world. There's usually about 1,000 people we accredit who come to the Fringe to find work, to find hopefully your work. And we won't just give you a list of 1,000 people and send you on your way. The point of the surgeries that we run is to find out exactly what you want to do with your work, and then we'll give you a filtered version of that list with the names and email addresses of the people who can help you most. And then it's up to you to contact them and to invite them to your show and to make further contact, and hopefully they'll come and see your show and they'll like it and the relationship will develop. We also run lots of sessions in this building, probably even in this room, which are to take that sort of edge off networking, because networking is this very scary thing, and the Fringe is really sort of 3.5 weeks of networking, but it's networking in the most pleasant possible way, because it's very sociable, lots of drinking, lots of seeing other people's shows, but again that can be a bit frightening, so the events here are a great way to just dive into that without it being too scary. So you get to come to events, as Lesley Anne says, you learn loads of things, and we present this program to help you develop your skills. And while you're developing skills, you're also meeting people. You're meeting the people who are on the panels. You can go and talk to them. You're meeting other people in the audience, because it's not at the Fringe. It's not just about meeting that one person who's going to book your show, that one person who's going to make you famous. It's also about meeting your next collaborator, the person who's going to design your next set. They're all here in Edinburgh, so you just need to be out there and meet them and talk to them. So we provide some services, some facilities, some events to help you do that. But also the other piece of advice is really just to be open to it. It's such a fun festival, and you will meet people in bars and in queues for shows, and it needn't be scary and stressful in the way that networking often is seen. It's more just about being open to people and chatting to them.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to end this section by asking our panelists to think on one essential piece of advice. If you could only tell people one thing, what would it be? While you think on that, I'm going to give you some advice from some people that I asked a couple of weeks ago who have taken part in the Fringe before. First of all, Sarah Milliken, the comedian, says, spend time with your actual friends, not just performers that you know, and try not to drink too much. Alan Cumming shows his true Scottish colours by saying drink till it's over. Danny Minogue, who surprisingly did take part in the festival, says there's always a party, soak up the vibe. John Bishop says ignore reviews unless they are good, and I think that's really great as well. He also says remember it's only a month, it will end, few people know about it, and it will get better. Anthony Rapp says go see lots of shows, get inspired by other artists. Hal Sparks says walk everywhere, that way you'll be too tired to get into trouble. And Human Beatbox, Tom Thumb says steal toilet paper from your venue. Which I don't condone at all. So let's start with JD and work our way along.
Sorry, toilet paper. That's where it's done. Yeah. My one piece of advice, if I have to give one piece of advice, be passionate about the show that you're bringing. Believe in everything that you're doing. Come here committed to it 100%. Not 110% because that's impossible. That's not a percentile. You can't achieve that. But all of you be here to be here and enjoy that show and believe in that show. Nothing is going to make a show succeed better than that belief, and nothing will sink a show faster than coming in tired and a bit fed up with it. So yeah, be passionate about it, love it, and just tell everybody else how much you love your show. You know, you've worked hard on it, so make sure that that work is paid off in your love of it.
So my essential piece of advice is beware of the FOMO. FOMO is a phrase you'll hear a lot during the Fringe. It stands for fear of missing out. This is such a huge festival and there's so many amazing things going on every minute that it can often feel like you're not in the right place and everyone else is at that right party and seeing that right show, and that you've just done it a bit wrong, and that if only you'd done it better, everything would be perfect. And that's not true. It's such a big festival that everyone's experiences are going to be unique, and your experience is your experience. So trust your instincts, make your own decisions. Don't be driven by the FOMO. Your Fringe is your Fringe, and you need to make it the best it can be for you.
FOMO is why nobody sleeps in August, even though you make your way home several times a night.
Buying the Edinburgh Fringe Survival Guide. I have to do that, don't I?
Of course, yeah.
Eating fruit is quite a good one. People forget that you're eating crap food all the time. Get an apple. Eating an apple is good. Christabel talked about the fun of the Fringe in terms of networking. It is a fun way, but it is a fun festival, and I think it's very easy for us all to get very, very serious about all the terrible things that you might encounter. But so it is great fun, but it is also quite easy to lose your sense of perspective. And so Edinburgh has many, many advantages. One of them, it has a great big mountain right in the centre. Walk up Arthur's Seat, get a bit of distance for everything else, and be able to start putting things in perspective. One of the comments there said nobody else knows anything about it. It seems very, very, very important when you're in it, and it feels like you're at the centre of the universe, and which is all fantastic, but sometimes just to be able to take a deep breath and say, it's not that important, but there'll be another one next year.
My advice would be prepared in the good old scouting tradition. Be prepared by doing your research, which you're doing if you're watching this, and by looking at edfringe.com. And as we've said, it's a fantastic festival. We've been giving lots of serious advice, but be prepared to have a really, really good time, and be prepared to fall in love with it and have to come back every year for the rest of your life.
I would say see other theatre companies as your collaborators, not as your competitors. Collaboration is the real spirit of the Fringe, and if you collaborate with everyone else that's trying to get an audience, then that's going to help you enormously. You can collaborate on marketing, you can collaborate on technical support, you can collaborate on advice, and I think if you kind of come into the Fringe with that mindset that it's a big collaborative experience, you'll get much more out of it than if you come in expecting that you're just going to compete with 3,000 other shows.
Great, and I'm going to give some advice, even though it's not really needed. I'm going to say use our services at the Fringe Society. I genuinely believe that we have some of the best festival and events management staff in the world working for our organisation. People love it here. They never leave their jobs, which means they have loads of experience between them. Secondly, find a private practice that does vitamin B12 shots in Edinburgh. You can get them for £14, and it's much better and much safer than that possible Cavonia and Solpadeine overdose when you're ill that people do. It's a really simple thing. So we're going to move on to some of the questions that have been submitted in advance. Yes. Christabel, how does FEU work? What is it?
Does FEU work? So FEU stands for the Foreign Entertainers Unit, and that is a branch of our tax and revenue organisation here. So their business is making sure that anyone who isn't resident in the UK but is earning money here is paying their fair share of tax. So if you are not resident in the UK and you have an income from tickets, then you need to fill out a form. That form says how much you're spending on your show and how much your income is expected to be, and then you submit that. And most people don't make money doing a fringe show, so that submission is likely to show that you won't have a net profit, in which case they should waive the tax. But the other important thing, which is a change that recently happened, is that if your total income, not your profit, your income, is likely to be less than £8,105, which is often the case. If you're not looking at getting that much money in, then you don't have to submit the form at all. So all this information is on the website, and if you've got any questions, then please do get in touch with us. It's really straightforward, and we have hundreds of shows that come from abroad every year, and there's very rarely any problems. So as long as you've done your homework, it should be fine.
So while we're on that subject, do foreign entertainers need to pay VAT for fringe box office ticket sales?
Now, VAT is a very complicated subject, which everyone, again, it's one of the things where everyone's different. In terms of VAT, for the way that our box office works, your venue box office might be different. For our box office, we take a 4% commission of any tickets we sell, and we are obliged to charge VAT on that. But once we have taken any deductions from your ticket sales, we pass over the amount to you without any other tax deductions. And whether you're in the UK or abroad, it's then your responsibility to sort out your VAT and your tax as is appropriate for your status, the way you're registered, the way that you're set up.
Great. Okay, so Rose Brett Sodi Pop Sodi is a real name, I'm told, is asking on Facebook. We're all from Australia, have a cast of 10, and probably need funding to get there. Is it a feasible exercise to get funding? Which granting bodies are best to approach for our scenario?
Clearly they just have to light a fire and people throw their credit cards in.
Scoop them all up in the smoke.
Yeah. Anyone want to take this?
There may be, it's difficult to, without knowing where they are, it might be worth talking to the Australia Council, it might be worth talking to local government or the High Commission here. I'm not entirely sure of direct routes.
Yeah, it's probably worth you submitting that question again to participants@edfringe.com with a bit more detail about where you're from and the sort of budgets you're looking at, and then we can hopefully point you in the right direction of the right person in our organisation to support you.
With the kind of work that you're doing and whether you've been before and whether it's new, all those kind of different things, and whereabouts in Australia you are.
I think as a funding rule of thumb, it's usually easier to get money from your local area. If you're coming to Edinburgh, you're unlikely to get funding from Edinburgh or even from the UK. So usually it's your local businesses and your local agencies who will support you.
So we have Jude McComb asking, I would like to book a slot on the Royal Mile, a street performance. Is the process for booking this the same as for other venues? Christabel.
So the other thing that we've been talking about, the Royal Mile as a place for flyering. The other thing that happens on the Royal Mile is that there are stages and pitches where you can do a show. So there's different categories of those. If you are doing an inside show that's registered with us in the usual way that we've been discussing, then you have access to those to stage on the Royal Mile for free. That process opens in the spring, and you just apply through an online form. If you're not,
that's for doing excerpts of your show in order to sell tickets rather than the whole show.
Yeah. So that's a promotional opportunity that we offer for shows that are registered with us. If that's not what you're doing, if you're a street artist, a fire eater, unicycle rider, or you've got a street show or a busking show that you want to do, you can also get a slot on the Royal Mile without going through the registration process that we've been talking about. Again, that is through an online form that opens in the spring. There's a section on our website called Street Events and Trading. That's the homepage for that activity, and that's where the forms will be. They're not open yet, but if you visit that page, the different categories are already up there and a bit about the process.
Okay, so Lesley Anne, Gemma Hurst is asking, how important is a theatre critic's review to a show and their audiences?
Well, I think they're very important. I think people look for kind of certain benchmarks for advice in this kind of, enormity of shows they've got to see, and reviews are important. So it is important, if you can, to get press in as early as possible. So, coming back to what the Fringe offer, the Meet the Media session that the Fringe holds early in the Fringe is really, really important. If you get a review, make sure you go and stick a quote from it on the posters you might have around town, particularly if you get any stars, go and stick the stars on the posters, because you're going to be up there with thousands of other posters. So if you can make yours stand out with a kind of nice review from someone and a few sort of stars up there, I think it's really important. So do all that you can to get the press in. Even, obviously there's a kind of hierarchy of reviewers, if you like, so you might not be able to get people like the Scotsman or the Guardian or the kind of big reviewers, but don't obviously, they are gold dust to get into your show.
Bribes are welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's plenty of sort of smaller, particularly sort of more viral online reviewers. Just never ever turn a press or a reviewer down. Just let
I'm going to take this next question and give it to JD and Mark, and it's from Shellshock Comedy asking, what's your top publicity secret? So in terms of what's the best thing that you've done, and Mark, what's the best thing that you've seen for publicity?
Can we come back to
things that I've done that were legal. We've had a few. We had a great one for a show that decided to celebrate its existence with a giant amount of cake, and they did a big photo call for that, and it was this massive pink and white show was called Call Me, and it was the phone, and it was great, and obviously people got cake. People like cake. For one of my own shows, which involved zombies, it was before it was fashionable, and then nobody came to see it, and then I did it 3 years later, and then everybody came to see it. But I had people in hazmat suits handing out safety guides.
Oh, nice.
Which was fun, and it was interactive, and it just did something. It didn't actually tell you anything about the specifics of the show. It talked about the mood of the show. So it's about trying to think about how you're going to hook in someone. It's not always about simply describe your show. Sometimes it is about getting the theme across before you actually talk about anything real in the show, as it were.
Okay. Quickly, Mark?
Yeah, my mind's going blank. I mean, there's lots of little tricks that people use, but I'll sort of second that. And I think, if there is something that can make your press release stand out from the next one, and it might be a little badge, or it might be a piece of cake, or it might be some sort of photograph or something odd that attracts the attention, then maybe, the fact that you can still remember that show, whatever, it sticks in your head, and you think, oh yeah, that's that one, isn't it? And it might not make you go to it, but it might increase the chances of you going to it.
And there was some advice that we got at a previous roadshow about again doing your research and finding out the sort of journalists that are here and the sort of things that they write about and the sort of things that where you align with that, and then finding them on Twitter, finding them on Facebook, following them, getting to know what the kind of things that they like and how they like to be communicated with.
Can I just do a kind of producer's health and safety point as well? If part of your gimmick or promotional ideas you're going to hand out food, you have to be really, really careful, because you might be handing out food to people that have got allergies and you might get sued. So that's just, and lots of venues, if you bring a show and part of your show is giving out food to people, you should let your venue know, because they might have something to say about that.
I'd second that one. The cake gimmick was at the venue on site, so there was a lot of control. If you've got sweets, make sure they're individually wrapped. That's
Okay, we're running out of time. So, Kath, are there some genres that are better suited for touring, and does it differ by region?
No, I think with everything, as with everything else, that's about understanding your show and understanding your ambitions for your show, and then coming and talking to our arts industry office, either in a surgery or in a one-on-one about them. it's like a big matchmaking thing. So we work with the industry that we accredit to find out what they're looking for, the kind of scale, the kind of genre, all of those things. And then you work out your ambitions, and then we put those things together. So I don't think there's anything that's better or worse. And I certainly wouldn't advise you choosing the art form of your show because you think that's going to get you something. You choose the show because it's the show that you've chosen, and then come and talk to us, and we'll help you target.
Great. Christabel. Robert Grace is asking, as a newbie amateur, is there a recommended run time? As in 3 days, 7 days, 3 weeks?
Well, it is really up to you. There's no rules about that. We always recommend doing as long a run as you can because it takes a while to get word of mouth going, which is such a powerful tool in the Fringe. It can take a while from journalists seeing your work to the review coming out. If you only do 3 days, you'll probably just be getting into your stride and it's time to finish. So if you are new at this and if you're not a professional, so you have other commitments, then think about how long you can feasibly do. And if how long you can feasibly do at this point is only a week, then that's how long you should do. But certainly aim to do as many performances as you can, and think about the way to think about that is not what will 3 days be okay? It's like, how long can I do? How long can I take off work? How much can I afford to do? How much energy am I going to have? And push that to its upper limit and make your decision that way.
And I'm going to end on a great question that I want an answer from everyone on. It comes from Frankie Bynum Holmes. People with double barrel names are really cool. And it says, I'm coming over with a high school group to Edinburgh for the first time. What? That's not the question. What sort of things are a must when not performing? JD.
Are a must when not performing?
Yeah. What do you do in Edinburgh? What's the great thing?
Wow, great things to do in Edinburgh. There's so much. School group. It's a scary thing. We had a group of 72 last year. That's a lot of people. Obviously find things that like large groups. There's great museums, great things like, art museums, the fact that you can get the bus that just connects you to all the art galleries around Edinburgh, there's all that sort of stuff. Obviously with that larger group, I'd say try and find as many things that were free. And there's a lot of good free stuff around Edinburgh.
Great. Christabel?
Come into Fringe Central and soak up the vibe here and speak to other performers. Come to our events. Fringe Central is the home away from home for everyone taking part in the Fringe. So yes, certainly we would welcome a large group.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of things that have already been said, like go and see other people's shows. It's a tremendous opportunity to see the best performers in the world, the most exciting, not just the sort of, we've been focusing on the sort of new up and coming talents, but also you get some pretty big names performing here. So if you can spare the time, if it matches with your own performing thing, go and see them. And I've also said going up Arthur's Seat, so that's another free thing you can do.
Lesley Anne, shall we go to you just now?
I was about to say go
I'll come back.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
We can both go together.
Well, it depends on the age group with the children, really. I mean, Arthur's Seat's quite a long way. I think it is. Edinburgh is a really beautiful city, and there's something really sparky about it during the Fringe. So if you can't take a group of school children up Arthur's Seat because they're too young, then go to the St James's Centre shopping centre and go to the top floor of their car park because it's quick, it's easy. The kids can shop in the shopping centre on the way down, but you get an incredible view of the city, particularly down Princess Street and over Princess Street Gardens. It's free, it's easy. I would say take the children up there.
Kath?
Eat vegetables. Be nice to each other.
Yay! Okay, so that was the Fringe Guide to Doing a Show. I've had a great time. I'd like to thank our panellists for giving their time over to us. I'd also very much like to thank Inner Ear for making this possible, getting us online. We're assuming it all went okay. And we'd also like to take this moment to thank the Scottish Government, Edinburgh City Council and Edinburgh University Festivals Office, who support us wholeheartedly with this festival. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you all in August.